Sage, aka Sage the Urban Witch, and I am on for a live stream. We're going to do a channeled reading today on Nolan Wells, okay? Justice for Nolan Wells, okay? And you guys, I was very reluctant to do this reading. However, Spirit has been nudging me to do so. I have tried my best to steer clear and just remain behind the scenes to lift up, in prayer and in positivity and in healing frequency, lift up the higher vibration frequencies towards the spirit and soul of Nolan Wells and to Nolan Wells's parents and immediate and extended family and friends and people that he has touched and influenced all over the world. However, Spirit has been nudging me, and the spirit of Nolan Wells has been nudging me, and so, I just said, let me just be obedient and, do my part in terms of, if it could provide, if not clarity, then perhaps some answers, perhaps some sense of closure, some sense of whatever, to whoever should come across this particular live stream, okay? All right, now before we get into it, you guys, let me turn on my big screen so that I can see myself. I will not too much be looking at the chat today because definitely, this is not the type of reading where I'm going to be doing a lot of interaction with the chat or interaction with any of my supporters, okay? So, I definitely want to let you guys know that, okay? Do not at all think that you are being ignored, okay? Y'all know how I tell you. Just that when I'm in the ethers, I'm trying to focus, okay, on what I am doing, okay? And so that will be definitely, channeling in real time as far as what I'm being shown in the ethers regarding Nolan Wells, okay? So the purpose, or shall I say the topic or the title of this particular channel message, you guys, this is called what the original autopsy will never confirm, okay? Because at the time of me doing this live stream, if all of us who have been, very aware in terms of social media and what we have been seeing, we know that currently the original autopsy has been sealed, okay? So it will never be revealed to the public, okay? And even if it is, being allowed to be evidence for the grand jury, I doubt very seriously if even those findings and the details of that will even be released to the public, okay? There's a number of reasons for that. We're not going to too much get into that right now, okay? Because I want to stay on topic, okay? But I did want to say that is the whole gist of me wanting to do, or not really wanting, because your girl really didn't want to do it, okay? Of feeling the need to do a channel message as it relates to some things that are still leaving a lot to be left unsaid as far as the cause of Nolan Wells' death, okay? And up to now, the public has been waiting on evidence to confirm, yay or nay, if whether or not there was foul play. And unfortunately, you guys, I'm here to tell you that the way that the system has been set up, come through spirit, the way that people who are involved have, orchestrated this entire situation in terms of finding evidence, being able to prove if whether or not there was foul play. None of that is ever going to be clear and concise to the public as it stands, both with the original autopsy and with the independent autopsy, because with the first autopsy, there was so much corruption, as we all know, so many details that were deliberately withheld, so that by the time that there was an independent autopsy with, I believe his name is Dr. Mitchell in Washington, D.C., there was so many, there was so much time that had passed between by the time Dr. Mitchell received the body of Nolan Wells. There was so much decomposition, which I believe, your girl believed there was some accelerated, there was some manipulation of that, but, that's neither here nor there. To say that, he was not given really a fair opportunity to really, disclose based on the evidence presented to him of how to, have the the body reveal and tell a story of what took place that led to the cause of his death, aka his murder, is what I'm gonna say. And by the way, let me just go out there and say, dear one, for as a legal disclaimer, y'all, this reading is for entertainment purposes only. And if you know, you know, okay? So, by the time that, Dr. Mitchell received the body, because there were certain organs that were left behind with the original medical examiner, whose name I believe is Dr. Stacy Turner, the forensic pathologist and medical examiner in the state of Mississippi. We might have to do another reading on her later. Come through spirit. But because, I'm hearing there were vital, essential organs that could have been, properly examined to rule out or to confirm foul play, those particular organs, such as the throat and neck area. Also, I heard accounts, you guys, there's so much going on. It's so hard kind of to filter out what's truth, what's, speculation. So, spirit really does justice in terms of those of us who can see in the ethers to be able to discern, what's factual versus what can be, circumstantial, okay? But, because there were certain, vital organs that were left out of, when the body was transported with some of the other organs, we had the throat and the neck was not transported. The lungs were not transported, and the stomach was not transported. All of that which could have, confirmed or ruled out if there was foul play, if there was a hanging, if there was a drowning, if there was water in the lungs. So see how, because certain things are being left out, it's like a deliberate corroboration to deny or withhold the truth from those of us, the people, all of us who are on the team of righteousness and justice, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. And of course, first and foremost, to the parents of Nolan Wells, Christine and Elmore Wansley, okay? So Spirit wanted me to tap into the ethers, you guys, and to reveal to you guys what I am seeing in the ethers as I am going to do a psychic scan of Nolan Wells' body, what I'm seeing real time in the ethers from head to toe, and what Spirit is giving me the green light to say, or what he is giving me the red light to not say regarding, information of what the original autopsy will never be able to confirm because they don't want to. Because, if they was to confirm everything, first of all, there never would have been a need for an independent autopsy had they been forthcoming in the first place. So, there was some deliberate, action on their part to withhold information, okay? So it'll never be revealed because of that. And then secondly, because of the time that had, spanned from the time that the first original autopsy was done up until the time that Nolan Wells' body was transported to Washington, D.C. for Dr. Mitchell to do an independent autopsy. Time had passed. There was more decomposition of the body, and there were vital organs that were, did not accompany the body. There were certain organs that, as part of the autopsy, according to a little Google read, is proper procedure that, once the original autopsy is done, they take out the vital organs, they do their thing in terms of however they view it. They take certain samples of the organs, they take photos of it, okay, and then, they will take the remainder of the organs, they will put it in some type of pouch or what have you, that is dedicated for, specifically for the body. And they will put the pouch either in the chest cavity area or somewhere in the front cavity of the body, and then they will sew it up and transport it either to, excuse me, either to the mortuary or either to a second independent autopsy. And because certain vital options were removed, were not transported with, okay, deliberate sabotage, okay. Also because, thank you, Spirit, come through for that confirmation. And then also because, you know, due to the decomposition, there were certain certain things that you would not be able to see from the independent autopsy that you would have been able to see during the original autopsy. But time played a part in how the evidence just continued to fade and fade and fade. So, you know, the story was not quite clear in terms of, you know, what really took place with Nolan Wells, what really led to, you know, his murder. Now, definitively with evidence, because a lot of us, you know, listen now, we understand history. We understand how history repeats itself. And, you know, you don't really have to be a rocket science to, you know, use deductive reasoning and to figure out A plus B could definitely lead to C based on history. Okay. And also based on, excuse me. Yeah, they don't want the message to get out. We rebuke the bitches. The message, come through, Spirit. The message will get out. I'm just going to take my time and we going to do what needs to be done. Okay? But, you know, because of that, dear one, you know, a lot of us have had to, you know, infer, use deductive reasoning, you know, use, you know, historical context and use the fact of, you know, history repeating itself to come up with the answers. And also a lot of answers have been revealed to us based on what was not said and what was left out, what was deliberately not said, what was deliberately left out. So, you know, you kind of begin to, you know, put two and two together. But as far as it relates to, you know, what is being shown in the ether, something that, you know, the tangible evidence will never be revealed to us as the public. Unfortunately, the tangible evidence will never be revealed to us, never be revealed to, you know, the parents of Nolan Wells, okay? And so I'm going to do a scan in the ethers of Nolan's body from head to toe. But before we get into that, dear one, I wanted to give a little bit about Nolan Wells, as far as, you know, what Spirit was relaying to me about this very beautiful, dynamic, young black man, okay? So we know that Nolan Wells was born on August 19th, 2007, which makes him a Leo, okay? And so from that, dear one, I want to talk a little bit about Nolan's life path, okay? And also I want to talk about, you know, his frequency, you know, what was his purpose, what was he designed to do according to numerology, according to his life path, and according to his frequency, okay? So for those of you guys who don't know, when you want to find out a little bit about a person in terms of their life path, all you really have to do is you add up the person's birth date in terms of the month that they were born, the date that they were born, and the year. Okay, so you add up, you know, 08 for August, the 19th, you add that up, 08 plus 19 plus 2007, and you come up with a primary number. So for Nolan Wells, based on his birth date of August 19th, 2007, his life path number is the number 9, y'all, okay? Now with the number 9, your girl reads numbers differently. You know, every seer, every healer, every witch, yada yada, has their own way of reading. But I look at things in a different way. So sometimes, you know, or a lot of times when I'm looking at numerology, the numbers, they speak to me, okay? So as far as Nolan Wells' life path number being number 9, it represents the vibration of an ending. There was something that he came to end, and that there was also something that he came to birth forth, okay? Because also when you think about the number 9, you think about, you know, when a woman is pregnant, it takes her 9 months to give birth to that child, okay? But also in terms of the occultic 9 meaning, 9 representing an ending. So I'm going to tell you from my point of view what they mean for both what Nolan was supposed to end as far as his life purpose and what he was supposed to bring forth. Okay. So as far as his ending, what Nolan Wells was supposed to, or what his part of his life path was to do, was to end racism. Now, understand me, y'all. I don't mean end racism in terms of, he's just one person and he's going to totally eradicate racism from off the planet and off every heart, mind, and soul of every being. Okay, that's unrealistic. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean ending racism in terms of, in Nolan's own way, ending racism in the minds and in the hearts of people around him, people that he loved, people that he touched, people that he knew, and people that he did not know, people that just looked upon him and that were influenced by him in his own way. Because see, Nolan Wells is a light worker. He had that God body, that Christ consciousness. It was very, very difficult for people to remain angry with Nolan, or to kind of hold on to their stubbornness, or saying, your place is here, my place is there, stay in your lane, I don't like you because of this, that, and that. By the time you really got a chance to know Nolan, he would melt some of the most coldest hearts, and he would turn his haters into, friends, into believers. He would challenge their ideology and challenge them to think and look at things, look at life, look at the world in a different way, from a different perspective. Come through, Spirit. And that was part of his calling. That was a part of his purpose. So even a lot of people that, still today, dear ones, I heard a lot of, accounts about people that were saying, well, it was so unfortunate that Nolan, was hanging around, his white peers and, these friends of his and this and that and that and this. But you have to understand that, as part of his purpose, he was called to be a bridge between white and black. He was called to be like a bridge between bringing people together, regardless of race, regardless of culture, tradition, language, age. He was supposed to be the way shower, the light bearer, okay? So, and I'm hearing from Spirit, and we have seen accounts. I have seen accounts where even, the parents would talk about how they talked to Nolan as their son, and there were certain talks that they had to have with him to let him know how he is supposed to navigate as safely as possible, in this world, being a young black male in racist, institutionalized, racist America and in the world. So he had the talks, y'all. The parents taught him well. They kept him safe to the best of their ability. But for those of you guys who are parents, your girl is not a parent, okay? I'm channeling. But for those of you guys who are parents, Spirit says that, you all know that there's only so much that you can do. There's only so much. Once you impart as much as you can into your child, into your son or your daughter, it is now left up to them to carry forth what you have taught them. And you have to let them, live their life, within reason, to live out, what they feel is their calling, their purpose, their this, their that, and just hope and pray in the background that they're going to remain safe, that they're not going to forget everything that you have taught them. I'm hearing train up a child in the way that he or she goes, and when they are old, they will not depart from him. I'm hearing from Spirit, come through Spirit, that Nolan's parents are so rooted in faith, so rooted in conviction, but also with love, that they trained up Nolan Wells very, very well as a child. And he carried that with him. One of those things he carried with him, guys, is love. Unconditional love. The type of love that looked beyond borders, looked beyond borderlines, that looked beyond race, class, culture. He defied all of those boundaries, okay? That was a part of his purpose. So I'm hearing from Spirit that, as far as him having that purpose, you guys, of ending racism in his own way, person by person, heart by heart, influence by influence, he was supposed to do this throughout the entirety of his life, before it got cut short. But I'm hearing from Spirit that he will be able to accomplish more in spirit, come through Spirit, than he ever would have been able to accomplish in the flesh, in terms of really challenging the hearts and minds of people and bringing people together based on love and not based on hate. okay, based on love and not based on fear, but also, exposing the dark shadows of, hatred and resentment and racism and where it stems from. There's a healing that needs to take place in the state of Mississippi and a lot of states in the world, in the country, okay? There's a lot of healing that needs to take place, and dare I say that Nolan Wells is the catalyst for that healing that will continue on, long past, the grand jury decision, long past the this and the that, okay? His legacy of love and harmony and community, okay, will live on. That's part of his purpose. Now, he was supposed to do while he was still living, but I'm hearing from spirit what the enemy meant for evil, they meant to snuff him out and snuff out his legacy, but that's not going to happen. What the enemy meant for evil, God will turn it around and make it for good. So he will touch more hearts in spirit than he ever would have touched in the flesh. Come through spirit. That's part of his life path, okay? But also, as part of his life path at number 9, you guys, the 9 representing a birthing, okay? Part of Nolan Wells' life path as far as birthing something was to birth in racial tolerance and community, okay? Coming together, defying and, doing away with old, outdated, archaic, blasphemous traditions, the blasphemous generational ancestral curses and traditions of systemic and historical racism and white supremacy and racial hierarchy. That was a part of his purpose, to also to bring a birthing of a new way of being. I'm hearing almost like a cleansing, like to usher in a soul cleansing amongst the land, amongst the people. Okay, that was part of his purpose. And so, because he was not able to do it throughout the entirety of his life, that legacy of his life path and purpose of what he was supposed to do, that's going to continue through his spirit, is what I'm hearing from spirit, okay? And I'm hearing from spirit that, how guys, when you look at individuals who end up being very successful, like they end up being, some type of rock star or celebrity or, famous athlete, football player, basketball player. And it's like, you can tell the difference between, those that when they get their money, they were selfish when they were broke, so they're going to be selfish, when they make money, or they use their wealth and their riches to kind of hold it over other people and say, I'm the part of the halves and you're a part of the have-nots. I'm hearing from spirit that, Nolan Wells' spirit was so high vibrational. He was such a loving, beautiful, dynamic person that he literally would have used his, his success and his influence as a famous football star, because that's where he was headed, y'all. If he would have had a chance to live that out, I see in the spirit him doing a lot of things in terms of, nonprofit organizations, erecting, sports camps and, gyms and facilities to help those who are underserved, opening up and erecting gyms so that people that are underserved, that don't have gyms to practice to become the best athlete that they can possibly be. I see him as being the type of person where he would have used his wealth and influence to do that, to reach back to people that were less fortunate than him, to reach back to people that looked up at him as an influence, as a positive influence, to reach back and help those people. And that was snuffed out, unfortunately, because, of the evil that is prevalent in this world. Okay? Yeah. I'm hearing they did it to Jesus Yeshua. Come through spirit with that confirmation. They did it to Jesus Yeshua. They continue to do it to those who operate in Christ consciousness. Okay? And so also, as far as Nolan Wells's frequency, of him being a Leo, he carried that vibration of abundance. The number 8 represents abundance. So he was destined to be very, very wealthy, but he was destined to use his wealth to empower his community, to empower people, and not to use his wealth to, further divide himself from the rest of the world or the rest of community and put himself in a bubble and just say, well, I got it, I got mine, so now it's up for you all to get it. I got it out the mud, y'all got to get it too. Nah, he wasn't that type of person, okay? He would have done so well to use his wealth to, empower certain communities, certain people based on his causes, what he believed in, what he loved. And it was all stemmed from, his love of wanting to bring people together. And he would have had the opportunity to do that with wealth because money talks, okay? Money has a very powerful influence. A lot of times people can say things and it could be right on point, but if they don't have influence or if they don't have money, a lot of times they'll be looked over, okay? So now with Nolan, he already had that it factor. He already had that God body, that Christ consciousness. All he needed was to continue going down that trajectory of success. He would have been a very powerful and formidable person in terms of having influence over the collective, over a lot of people. And I'm hearing from Spirit that it was this very influence that Nolan had on his white peers, his counterparts, people that he grew up with in the community, people that he went to school with, okay, people that looked upon him, again, he caused people to, really challenge their value systems. People that would try to, hate him and say, I don't like you. You need to stay in your place, this and that. If they hung around or got an opportunity to even observe Nolan for just a little bit of time, Nolan would have softened their hearts. They would not have been able to continue to hate Nolan because they would have realized that there was no reason to hate him. He was just, embodiment of love, embodiment of peace. So, I'm hearing from Spirit that it wasn't so much his peers that had an issue with him. Not at first, okay? Because, and the way that I'm looking at it too, you guys, okay, think about it. Nolan grew up in that community. That community was very culturally, racially diverse. So he went to school with some of these people, some of his peers, okay? Middle school, early primary school, all the way up to high school and, college. So if it was all like that, where his so-called friends or his peers, his white counterparts, if they hated him to the core that much, at that, like that, I say they would have tried to snuff him out a long time ago. They would have, been the type of crew where they would have been bullying him in school so viciously that perhaps Christina and Elmer would have said that, hey, we're going to have to take Nolan out of this school. We're going to have to homeschool him, or we're going to have to relocate or something like that. But it was never to that point. It wasn't until there was a change in the parental dynamic around these people. And I say that to say that it wasn't until, some type of family structure change where some adults around Nolan's peers began to put a battery in their back to turn them against Nolan. I'm telling you, dear one, that what I'm seeing in the ethers is that you have some older adult grown folks that should know better, but they're steeped in racism, they're steeped in ignorance, that they put the battery of turning them against Nolan and looking at him no longer as a friend but as the enemy, no longer as a friend but as a threat, no longer as a friend but as the other, that they objectified him so in their mind. These peers of Nolan were indoctrinated. They were brainwashed. They were lured into, some type of false sense of, privilege and superiority and, some type of, thinking that they would get power through some type of very dark initiation. But this was a battery that was placed in the back by the older adults, the people that were around them. So when we look at one of those families, we know that, it was all good until a certain, step parent came into the picture, and then it seemed like everything went to hell in terms of, now there's altercations, now there's fights, which leads to this and which leads to that. Well, if it was so much to the point where there was so much racial tension that Nolan supposedly brought about, then why didn't they create an altercation to take him out earlier? God rest his soul, Emmett Till, they took him out at the age of 14. So why was it that, if they thought that they were so brazen and they hated Nolan so much that they could get away with it, they thought they could get away with it, why didn't they try to take him out, earlier? I heard accounts of how he spent nights over their house, how they hung out together, all the time. He had a lot of sets of friends, but with these particular rich, wealthy white peers of his, they hung out. They did a lot of things together that, for years and years and years, if you had that much vitriol and hatred for someone that was your peer, there is no way that, you would not have been able to restrain yourself for all that amount of time if you hated him that much. But you could have been, it's easy to be brainwashed, okay? When someone else comes into the picture and you're forced to choose them over Nolan, and you're forced to look at this person as someone that knows better because they're older, because they're a part of the family, because they're claiming that they love you, and now you're being indoctrinated and brainwashed, okay? And then you're given substances and this and that, yeah. We know, dear one, no matter how old you are, we all know that, racism is taught, okay? It's taught at the home. No child, no woman, man, or child comes out of the womb, comes into this world as a racist. You can put a black baby and a white baby together in a room, away from their parents, away from older adults, and those babies will love each other, play with each other. They'll point at each other and say, ooh, look at you. You got a baby belly like me. Ooh, look at you. You wearing a diaper like me. Ooh, look at you. You got eyes like me. You got ears. You got a nose just like me. They will not be looking at each other with differences and seeing difference as wrong. It is not until they are taught that from their older generations, where that generational curse and that legacy of supremacy and racism is passed down from generation to generation. Come through spirit. But, I say all that to say, dear one, that, it wasn't until there was a shift in terms of, the family dynamic structures and the people around Nolan Wells's peers, his friends, that everything began to go downhill, where at that point, Nolan Wells became such of a threat, such of a target, that, he didn't see it coming. He would not have seen it coming, because again, he was operating out of love. He was operating from the standpoint of, I know these guys. I know these people. I grew up with them. I befriended them. I partied with them, ate with them, hung out with them, played sports with them, spent nights over their house, maybe played video games with them, did whatever. But there was a dynamic shift that changed, okay? And that changed everything. And that changed the trajectory of Nolan Wells in terms of him going from being seen as a friend to being seen as a threat. From being seen as a friend to being seen as someone that, this person is out of their place. This person, they're getting too big for their britches. Oh, this person needs to be taught a lesson. Oh, if this person makes it, that's going to make the rest of us, the rest of you all look bad, okay? All of that began to change, began to shift, okay? To the point where before it was all said and done, before it was too late, Nolan didn't have a chance because, his friends had become his enemies, okay? But, I'm hearing as far as the frequency of his vibration of being a Leo, that he was very much so destined to be wealthy and to use his wealth to empower his community, okay? Yeah. Also, now, dear one, I want to, I'm taking notes so I won't get too far off track here when I get into the ethers, okay? But, okay, yeah. Now, you guys, we can get into what the original autopsy will never reveal to us, as far as like what I just told you guys in the beginning, because of what they chose to withhold, okay? And, the fact that they don't want to, if they were have to been forthcoming in the first place, there would never have been a need for an independent autopsy in the first place. So we knew that there was some deliberate, corruption going on there. But, I'm going to the best of my ability, you guys, do like a psychic impression as I look in the ethers and look upon parts of Nolan Wells's body and tell you guys what I am being shown. based on what the original or the independent autopsy will never be able to confirm or to reveal. Okay, and again, I say that this particular reading, this video, is for entertainment purposes only. Okay, so okay, what am I seeing, dear one, in terms of, as I look at Nolan's head? First of all, Spirit is showing me that there has been like a patch of hair that was removed from Nolan, cut, shaved, or snatched out of his hair. There is a chunk of hair that has been removed from Nolan, and it has been saved as some type of trigger warning, as some type of sick emblem, or some type of trophy or something of the sort, is what I'm hearing from Spirit. So as I look at the head, there is a patch of hair that is missing. Okay, it also could have been a patch of hair that was removed when there was a struggle, and he was also grabbed by the back of his head and restrained at some point. Okay, so I'm seeing hair that has been, a patch of hair that is missing. Okay, as I scan down, you guys, I'm seeing that my right, his left eye, the eye is so swollen, so bruised, was so closed shut that it was almost, trigger warning, guys, it was almost half hanging out of his face, out of his eye socket. I'm seeing that in the ethers. Trauma and damage to his eyes. I'm also hearing that there are certain parts of his organs that are going to indeed be trafficked, and there are certain parts of his organs that are going to be kept as, like, again, some type of sick ritualistic trophy. I'm also seeing that his nose was fractured or broken. I'm seeing blood from the ear, so busted eardrum. And we already know that the throat, blunt force trauma. Blunt force trauma to the back of the head, thank you, Spirit. Swelling of the brain, blood hemorrhaging. So brain swelling. There would also have been revealed a fracture in the skull. With the neck, clearly you would have been able to see that there was some type of damage done to the neck. I'm hearing asphyxiation, airways cut off, okay? So damage to the sensitive area of the throat. I would dare say a hanging, allegedly. Also, Spirit is showing me, come through, Spirit, sometime throughout this ordeal with Nolan fighting for his life, y'all, because he was fighting, but he was outnumbered and he was taken down. I'm being shown so many scenes that it was like scene after scene after scene. It wasn't a quick, hit and drop. It wasn't a quick, hit it and quit it, that's it. There was lingering torture that took place. Very sick in multiple locations. I'm also hearing, come through, Spirit, I'm hearing abuse of a corpse. So long after Nolan's soul was out of his body, his body was still being abused, is what I'm hearing from Spirit. But okay, I'm seeing the neck, okay, very much so damage to the front and the back of the neck, the throat, the Adam's apple, because I believe that Nolan had Adam's apple. The Adam's apple is crushed or punctured or wounded from some type of blow. Yeah. Spirit is telling me also, dear one, sometime throughout this brutal torture and beating of Nolan Wells when he was defenseless, that someone punched him in his throat as well. I'm also seeing that he vomited. He lost his wind and he vomited. So considering that the throat was left, the stomach, the lungs, if that would have been properly examined at the time when the evidence was there, they would have seen stomach acid in the throat because Nolan had vomited during that ferocious, vicious torment that he was enduring when he was fighting for his life. Come through, Spirit. I'm also seeing my right, Nolan's left, that there's some type of bruising or dislocation of his shoulder, because I'm seeing a flash of him being restrained. Like, you know how when you're trying to get away and someone grabs you and it's like they have so much force as they're pulling you and literally bending your arms and your shoulders back, that his left shoulder popped out of his socket. I'm seeing that. That would have been revealed in the original autopsy. As I look at Nolan's torso, the front of his chest, stomach area, the side and the back, Spirit is saying repeated force and trauma, cracked ribs, thank you, Spirit, cracked ribs on the left side. So somebody that was right-handed was really using force as they were punching Nolan Wells in his throat, in his chest, in the heart, in the rib area. So I'm seeing, Spirit is telling me, and I'm seeing cracked rib. I'm also hearing punctured or collapsed lung. Now there's two sides to the lung. There's two lobes. You have one lobe is bigger than the other. I'm hearing the big part of the lungs, the big part of the lobe has some type of bruising to it, is what I'm being shown in the ethers here. Bruising on the side, like black, bluish marks, like almost purplish marks on the left and right side of Nolan, like he's being repeatedly punched or kicked, and that side, his side is being bruised. From the back, the lower back, Spirit says kidney damage, repeated blows, kidney damage. Spirit. I'm also hearing at a certain point of the continued torment that Nolan's bladder released itself. But I'm hearing kidney damage. Okay, thank you, Spirit. Also, Spirit is taking me back up to the arms. What would have been revealed in the original autopsy is that there were lots of bruising on Nolan's arms, on both of his arms, particularly his knuckles. Busted knuckles, bloody, bruised knuckles, partly from him trying to fight back, but also at a certain point when he realized he was outnumbered, I'm seeing the vision, you guys, of him just taking his hands and trying to cover up his head, almost like in a fetal position, but still standing, you know? And he was taking repeated blows to his hands, his knuckles, his wrists, as he was trying to shield, to the best of his ability, his face and his head. That would have been revealed. Also, dirt and blood under his fingernails. That would have been revealed to show some type of resistance, some type of, defense wounds, trying to fight to the best of his ability, or, trying to grab something, struggle. Yeah, you would have seen a lot of damage to the nails, dirt, blood under the nails, busted knuckles, wrists, swollen, bruised. Okay. Now, when I get down to the lower extremities, you guys, I want to let you know that I cannot see. I see like a black, like cloudy covering over Nolan's private area. And I'm hearing that that is the case for two reasons. Number one, to retain his dignity is what I'm hearing from Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. But also, thank you, Spirit, I just saw a question mark. So a question mark being that was not his genitalia still in place by the time his body got to the first original medical coroner for the original autopsy, or by the time it got to the second autopsy for the independent autopsy. If it was not there, that information could perhaps have been left out for a lot of reasons, okay? To avoid a massive outcry and rage and a potential riot. And, also some personal consequences of revealing that information is also a possibility. But as far as what I'm being shown, I'm not being allowed to see that part of his anatomy. Also, Spirit is saying there should be, there's questioning around, had the body been thoroughly examined by the original medical coroner for the first autopsy, if there was any evidence of SA, some type of violation, because I keep hearing abuse of a corpse. I keep hearing necrophilia. As I look further down Nolan's body to his thighs and his knees, marks on the knees, scrapes, bruises on the knees, on the thigh area. It's almost as if, evidence of being dragged on his belly, dragged face down in some way, shape, or form. So bruisings, markings on the knees, on the front of the thighs, on the front of the legs is what I'm saying. And I keep seeing flashes of like almost like the background is a blur, but it's showing me that there's different movements, different places where Nolan's body is being found, where he's still continuing to be tortured and abused. And I keep hearing abuse of a corpse. So even after he had expired, there were things that were still being done to Nolan Wells's body. And this is where the sick ritualistic component comes into it, okay? I'm hearing satanic ritual abuse, allegedly. I'm also hearing necrophilia. And as part of this sick ritualistic custom, when necrophilia is involved, you have initiates and you have these sick individuals that when they do that, their agenda is to receive the essence of that person's energy, essence, all the way from the anus, all the way up through the chakra system to the pineal gland, where lies a person's intuitive abilities, intellect, talents, gifts, skills, DNA coding, wherein lies their Akashic records of who they are to be, all of that essential knowledge through the pineal gland, okay? There's a ritual that is done to try to extract that. That is done through the ritual of sodomy. Because they hated him but they also coveted his DNA, potential, essence, energy, destiny. And they literally were trying to consume it into themselves through the diabolical ritualistic act, is what I'm hearing from spirit. Abusive, of course. Okay? Again, you guys, this reading is for entertainment purposes only, as a legal disclaimer. Thank you, Spirit. This is all that I'm being shown as far as the scan of Nolan Wells' etheric, energetic body. This is all that is being revealed to me. This is all that I am being allowed to see in the ethers, okay? So having said that, dear one, take this information as you will, okay? Again, this is for entertainment purposes only, the channeled reading of this video. And in closing, I just want to say justice for Nolan Wells, okay? May he receive it however it is meant for him to receive it. May his soul be at peace. May his family, immediate and extended, and his true friends that loved and valued and that were touched by him, may their souls, bodies, spirits, minds find peace, closure, rest, resolve, as they continue to walk out this walk regarding justice. Come through, Spirit, with that confirmation regarding justice for Nolan Wells. Okay? And that's all, dear one, that I have to say about that, okay? So I'm going to close the reading and hope that you guys continue to enjoy the rest of your beautiful day, morning, evening, noon, or night, okay? And until next time, you guys, stay beautiful, stay blessed, and stay great. Peace.